tackling the factors that can keep African girls from realizing their dreams, such as child marriage, early pregnancy, and gender discrimination.
Allegations of abuse of female IDPs by Nigerian security officials. President Buhari orders an immediate investigation into the charges following a Human Rights Watch report.
And U.S. President Barack Obama soon will end his second term in office. What legacy will he leave behind? Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, I'm Chamberlain Uso at Channels Television here in Lagos. Welcome to our show as we go around the continent to bring you news and stories from across Africa.
Well, thanks a lot, Uso. I'm Vincent Makori coming to you from Studio 51 at the Voice of America's global headquarters in Washington. Now,
every government has the responsibility of protecting its citizens, especially the most vulnerable. But it appears as though the Nigerian government has noted and they are investigating allegations of abuse and exploitation of females in camps for internally displaced persons in the Northeast region. And that's after the Human Rights Watch accused security officials of rape. Here's our report.
Victims of insurgent attacks displaced from their homes have since taken shelter in several camps in the northeast in the hope of getting protection from their assailants. But a recent report by the Human Rights Watch points to accusations of gross human rights violation in these camps, including rape and exploitation of women and girls by security personnel. Earlier in July, the group also documented cases of sexual abuse of 43 women and girls living in 7 IDP camps in Maiduguri, Borno State. The group's senior researcher in Nigeria gives credence to the report.
It goes beyond just criminal investigations. Those women, those girls need immediate medical and mental health, psychosocial support. We definitely cannot say that it is happening in all the IDP camps in Nigeria. But what we do know is that in many of the camps in Maiduguri, there are 13 formal camps in Maiduguri. And I also must point out the fact that other institutions, including the UN, had released reports, assessment reports earlier in the year, as far back as April and May, alluding to the fact that these abuses were occurring and asking the government to act immediately. So we definitely know that it is happening in Maiduguri, where most of the people displaced by the Boko Haram conflict are resident. Whether they are occurring in other camps outside of Maiduguri or outside of Borno State, we do not know.
Worried by the report, President Muhammadu Buhari gave a directive for immediate investigation of alleged rights abuses in the camps, reiterating his commitment to the welfare of these most vulnerable Nigerian citizens. Findings of the report will define appropriate action that will be taken. Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police has set up a special panel to thoroughly investigate the allegations of exploitation of females in the camps. And the assurance from the government is that it will do all it can to protect the rights of all internally displaced persons and support them until they return to their communities.
You're watching Africa 54. I'm Chamberlain Uso. The federal government has a new plan to borrow money from other nations to fund infrastructure projects across Nigeria. But is it a viable plan? We're joined now by Channels Television's head of business desk, Mr. Bosun Omofaye. Thank you for coming on the program
appreciate
today.
it, Chamberlain.
Well, the conversation has been about this loan, and some of the big questions out there is, do we really need this loan?
Yes, Nigeria does really need the money. We're looking at $450 billion infrastructure deficit. So $30 billion is still a drop in the ocean if you look at what you need to fix as far as the country is concerned. Population is increasing massively. You have very massive young population. So you really need to fix infrastructure, and you need every dime you can have on the table.
Well, almost immediately after that, they also seem to ask, have we put in place enough measures to ensure that we could pay back?
Well, Things are a little bit sketchy, as it were, in terms of the details. But of course, if you're looking at the word on the street already, what do we know? 20 to 30-year repayment period, that's long enough. That looks good enough. If we can find $450 million or thereabout over a 30 or 25 to 30-year period, that is good for the country. Again, the current oil prices downturn will likely taper off at some point, and if it doesn't over the next 3, 5, 10 years, which will definitely change one way or the other, you will definitely find that at the current price levels, Nigeria can begin to work its way backwards and forward over time. Again, if you diversify the economy into mineral resources, agriculture, and other exports drive, which fetches you liquidity in dollar terms or in foreign exchange terms, then you will have what it takes to really repay the loan.
I also know that there was that conversation about whether or not we should be going to the IMF to get a loan, because people are emotional about the requirements of IMF. What do you think? Well,
folks around here are emotional about the IMF, and they are emotional about IMF all around the world. Concessionary loans from other multilateral agencies concern the Asian Development Bank and others from Japan, perhaps from the EU, rather than that of the IMF. The conditionalities of the IMF are stringent, but even the $30 billion loans we're talking about now will still come with very stringent fiscal restructuring that the creditors would demand from the Nigerian authorities to put in place, not only for the immediate, but for the medium and the long term, to ensure not just repayment, but to ensure that the projects are viable, they are bankable, they are projects that will be able to benefit millions of Nigeria, and not only pay back over time, but ensure that it galvanizes the economy moving forward, not just in the immediate time to get out of the current recession, but to move on a sustainable basis for the years and decades coming ahead.
You know, there's also that conversation about the organized private sector, how going externally to borrow money will free up capital for the local investors here. How should the OPS handle this?
The organized private sector would always have something to borrow. If the government at a sovereign level can borrow $30 billion, it's a confidence for creditors and investors around the world to also look favorably at the private sector as a way of getting loans, foreign loans, that is. When Nigeria's credit rating was downgraded, you saw what happens across board. Lagos State got downgraded, a few other organizations get downgraded. So the better it is at the fiscal, at the sovereign space, the better it is also for organized private sector to also approach the global marketplace and get more loans and work with it.
Well, thank you, Bosun Mafaye, for joining us on Africa 54.
My pleasure.
Well, the tiger, the rhinoceros, the gorilla, the list of animals that have been pushed to the brink of extinction is long. But scientists in Limpopo, South Africa, have used in vitro fertilization to create the world's first test-tube Cape buffalo. Kevin Enoch has the story.
Pumalelo, the buffalo bull calf, was born on June 28th and was unveiled to the world in late September. She is a product of in vitro fertilization, which doctors have been using on humans for 40 years. Transferring the process to animals is a real victory for scientists.
We've worked out the buffalo, and it gives us a stepping stone, and it gives us all the information that we need to do the same procedure on rhinos and all other endangered species.
The next step for the team is to try and transfer the technique to some of the world's most endangered species.
Around the world there's many species that's on the brink of extinction, and just mere normal natural breeding would not increase their numbers. There we can think of species like the giant sable, the bongo of East Africa, the urilu of Mombasa area in Kenya, and most important, the northern white rhino, of which there are only 3 of.
That Pumalelo is alive and well is a hopeful sign for animals like the rhino, which are so scarce, scientists say artificial reproduction is the only way to ensure their existence. Kevin Enoch, VOA News, Washington.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out all headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Well, coming up, farmers in Kenya are embracing environmentally friendly irrigation systems that keep their crops watered all around the clock. That story after the break.
I am Shaka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
Well, here in the United States, this week's election means that President Barack Obama will be leaving the White House in January. Many in Africa consider Obama as one of their own. What will be his legacy? Jill Craig has that story.
Hopes were high in Africa when President Barack Obama took office. Perhaps too high, suggests Kenyan political commentator Barack Muluka.
And if we in Africa were looking up to him to come with a magic wand to solve our problems, then I think our expectations were misplaced. He was not the president of Africa. He has been the president of the United States of America, elected by American citizens, and his foreign policy would be governed first and foremost by American interests.
As president, Obama made 4 trips to sub-Saharan Africa, visiting 6 countries. He has challenged African governments on issues like human rights. He set the tone during his first visit in 2009 to Ghana when he said Africa doesn't need strong men, it needs strong institutions. A highlight of his Africa foreign policy has been his emphasis on trade, not just aid.
I think President Obama built a framework for the U.S. corporate sector to get engaged with Africa by consistently engaging through the business councils and so forth. It sort of de-risked Africa in a lot of U.S. corporate minds, and I think that was an important achievement that the president made.
Obama also made a point of addressing African youth, a group he focused on throughout his time in office. Here he is in Kenya in 2015.
And when it comes to the people of Kenya, particularly the youth, I believe there is no limit to what you can achieve.
And Obama's message of hope to Africa and its young people may be what defines his legacy here.
He's shown Africa a higher path, and I think he's done this generally. That's been his politics, that he's always lifted people's heads up and says, look where you can go. On first.
Obama launched the Young African Leaders Initiative in 2010 to help promising young people across the continent prepare for leadership positions. More than 250,000 people have joined the Yali network so far, and in 2016, 1,000 fellows attended leadership programs at U.S. colleges and universities. Jill Craig, VOA News, Nairobi.
Well, now to South Africa. It's a different president with a different story. President Jacob Zuma stands accused of improper dealings with wealthy businessmen, and many South Africans are calling for his resignation. Channels Television's Johannesburg bureau chief, Betty Dibia, has that story.
It seemed quiet outside the court, but a lot was happening inside. Close by, opposition party groups were marching in defense of the constitution, they say. The court did rule that the so-called state capture report be made public same day.
Tonight, we'll be reading this report, and every time we speak, people think we play games. It is because we knew that we had a watertight case, and that Zuma had no leg to stand on. He is unfit to be president. He's violated the constitution, and today, this state capture report will ultimately lead to us, whatever the report says and whatever actions we take. Remember, we've asked him to resign. Parliament must remove him next week, and he must face criminal actions if it is so proven in the report.
Civil society groups, including ANC stalwarts, also met on the sidelines under the umbrella Save South Africa. Is this the beginning of the end for President Jacob Zuma? He survived votes of no confidence as well as an impeachment vote in Parliament. And despite increasing calls for him to step down now, most of his supporters insist that his mandate ends in 2019 and not earlier.
If people, they think the president is not good enough at the moment, those are the people that they can decide to change everything in this country.
What we really want to see in our country is a government that sticks to, abides by, respects the Constitution of South Africa so that all the people in our country can live a life of dignity.
Several reactions have trailed the release of the report. The president is studying it to see if there is any need for a legal challenge. The ruling African National Congress has welcomed it in the spirit of its introspection. One of those mentioned in the report for alleged questionable interactions with the Gupta family and their energy business, Tegeta, is the Chief Executive Officer of the state-owned energy company, Eskom, Mr. Brian Molefe. He didn't take kindly to the content of that report concerning him and even got emotional at a point.
The public protector has painted him. There will be a commission of inquiry established 6 months from now. We will get the results maybe 18 or 24 months from now. And I do not think that the basis of what she says about Eskom and myself is correct.
A full transcript of the president's 4-hour meeting with the former public protector has been made public. President Jacob Zuma returns to the country from Zimbabwe to more fights on his hands, especially in Parliament, where he will appear soon. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betsy Dibia, Channels Television News.
You're watching Africa 54. I'm Vincent Makori. In Kenya, some farmers are embracing solar-powered drip irrigation systems for their crops and saving money in the process. VOA's Paul Ndiho has the story.
Irrigation can be a problem for small-scale farmers in Africa. In Kenya, many are harnessing that power to help them irrigate their fields. Peter Mathenge has installed solar panels in his field to power a drip field irrigation system on the outskirts of Nairobi.
For me, solar irrigation kit is very important. Without it, we spend $300 every month. Actually, more than $300 every month to buy diesel.
Sun Culture designs, manufactures, sells, and distributes solar-powered irrigation systems in Africa. We were the first company in Africa to commercialize solar-powered irrigation. We have just released Africa's most affordable irrigation kit, and we're the only SME in the world providing a turnkey solar-powered irrigation solution for farmers.
Samia Ibrahim was one of the African innovators competing at the recently concluded AG Innovation Summit, organized by USAID. The event attracted more than 50 agricultural technology innovators and investors.
It pumps water to an elevated tank using the power of the sun, and then uses the gravity to release water through irrigation, delivering water effectively to crop roots. And we sell directly to farmers in Kenya and in East Africa.
Ibrahim wants more farmers to have access to technology and says it will change the future of farming.
Farmer in Kenya wants one of our products. The farmer calls us. We send a technician to our farm. The technician does a survey on her farm. We give her a quote, and as soon as she pays, we deliver the product directly to her farm the next day. And one of our trained technicians and agronomists goes, installs the system, gives her training, and gives her agronomy support on the spot.
Many Kenyan farmers irrigate their farms by flooding the land from nearby rivers, dams, wells, and boreholes, which can erode and deplete the soil of its much-needed nutrients. Methenge is quick to note the benefits of embracing new technology.
If Africa is to break through, if we are ever to break through as farmers, we got to start embracing technology, and that's what we have done. Without technology, this piece of land, this small piece of land here, you could harvest something like 90 kg per week, but after embracing technology, we are harvesting on average 160 kgs of budded chilies in an eighth of an acre.
The Sun Culture kits range from $400 to $2,500. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
It's time now for a short break, but before we go, a reminder to visit our website. It's channelstv.com for all the latest information anytime, any day. You can also find us on youtube.com/channelsweb. And still to come, in South Sudan, an effort to tackle some of the things that have historically contributed to unequal education opportunities for girls and boys. Well, that story will bring you after the break.
I'm Milar Sega. I'm the host of VOA's The Correspondents, a roundup of the world's top stories with analysis from our dedicated reporters. It's really a conversation the same way that you would bring a friend to your home and ask them what's going on. And our correspondents will do that and answer those questions through their own eyes.
That appears a false choice in more ways than one.
We can't actually put you there, but we can come pretty close. In 30 minutes, we'll show you the world.
Welcome back. Now, 22 years ago, Somali-born Ilhan Omar was living in a refugee camp in Kenya. Today, she intends to become a lawmaker in the state of Minnesota House of Representatives as the first female Muslim American immigrant to do so in the United States. VOA's Ken Faraba has the story.
33-year-old Ilhan Omar is confident and unapologetic.
Being unapologetic about being Muslim, being black, being an immigrant and refugee.
She is a newcomer to Minnesota politics and has come a long way since fleeing Somalia as a young girl.
The little girl in that refugee camp, 22 years ago, was very much interested in survival, in the day-to-day. I don't think she could dream about this grand dream and plan.
Omar's grand plan to successfully win an election for a seat in the Minnesota House of Representatives in a liberal district in Minneapolis seemed like a long shot, says University of Minnesota political science professor Lawrence Jacobs.
From afar, Ilhan Omar had everything going against her. She was a Muslim in a state that's predominantly Christian. She's black in a state that is among the whitest states in the country. She was a woman where women are not well represented in the legislature. She was an immigrant in a state that doesn't have a lot of immigrants.
There are about 25,000 Somali Americans in Minneapolis, many of them refugees like Omar. A majority of them supported another member of the diaspora, Mohammed Noor. He was one of two other viable challengers Omar faced in the primary election.
Coming from a community that usually sees leadership as a man's role, that played a huge part in creating a lot of difficulties.
So she reached outside the diaspora and campaigned to win the support of other voters, including college students like Patrick English.
On the issues, we align in a lot of ways and care about the same things.
English not only cast a ballot, he joined Omar's campaign and spread the word among other students in the district. Omar's outreach worked. It was enough total votes to give Omar the win, defeating longtime legislator Phyllis Kahn, who had held the seat since the 1970s.
Yes, we did.
Omar is now positioned to win the general election November 8th without a Republican challenger in the race. If she is successful, when Omar walks through the doors of the Minnesota State Capitol for the new legislative session that begins in January, she will make history as the first female Muslim American immigrant lawmaker in the United States.
The weight of it, I think it's huge.
Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Child marriage, early pregnancy, and gender discrimination are some of the factors that may keep young African girls from realizing their dreams in South Sudan's capital, Juba. There's now an emphasis on tackling barriers that have contributed to unequal education opportunities for boys and girls. Here's our report.
At age 10, girls approach a crucial point in their lives because at this age, their future can either be made or marred depending on the supports they get. This year's State of the World Population Report with the theme 10, How Our Future Depends on a Girl at This Decisive Age, emphasizes the need to save millions of girls from a lifetime of poverty and powerlessness.
When a girl enjoys her rights, is able to stay in school, stay healthy, and be protected from child marriage and early pregnancy, her full potential may be realized by the time she reaches adulthood. She will be better equipped to find a job, earn a good wage, and seize opportunities as they arise.
According to UNICEF, girls' education in South Sudan is low at 35% compared to boys in schools, a situation that affects development.
The State of World Population reports shows that girls who reach adulthood with an education and their health and rights intact stand to triple their lifetime income. Higher incomes and greater productivity can help fuel progress for entire countries.
Like in other war-torn countries all over the world, prolonged conflict in South Sudan has disrupted education for many children, hundreds of them now in refugee camps struggling to find proper shelter and other basic needs. Many of the girls in such camps are pushed into early marriage, denying them the opportunity of getting an education and having a chance to make their dreams a reality.
Well, and that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on the VOA website at voaafrica.com. I'm Vincent Makori in Washington. Chaplain Ozo has our last word from Lagos.
Thanks, Vincent. And we look forward to bringing you another show next week. And don't forget to check out our website as channelstv.com for all the news and information that you could use anytime, any day. I'm Chamberlain Usoh. So long, everybody.
This is Everyday Grammar. I'm Lucia.
And I'm Kaveh.
Kaveh, do you know that one of our Facebook fans wrote to us saying,
English speakers talk too fast. I can't understand what they're saying.
Do you think Todd will want to go to the movie? What do you think she'll do?
I've heard that as well. I think it's because English teachers speak so slowly and pronounce every single word clearly. But native speakers squeeze, shorten, combine, and drop sounds all the time.
So what can English learners do?
I think it's important to listen for key grammar words like be, have, do, to, and will. These words are often shortened.
That's true. My friend always says, do you want to go instead of do you want to go?
That's right. Americans speak very quickly to each other.
I'm leaving now. I'll see you tomorrow.
What do you want?
What you gonna do about it?
The key is to train your ears to listen for shortened grammar words.
Why can't people just slow down so English learners can understand?
Well, listening to slow speech is important when you're learning. But for regular people on the street, it's just not natural to speak like an English teacher.
Good advice. I'm going to send that to our Facebook fan.